Thanks, guys, for bringing that new program from the ISA. I want to thank our sponsors for this event. It takes more than just us to put it on. And one is KFS, which is Classic Farm Systems. What have we been promoting all morning? Production of what? Oh, come on, guys. Forage. What else?
Small grains.
Small grains. Guess what? Most of our grain bins will not hold small grains. And I'm saying the chisel cut floors are too big, most of them, to support cereal rye especially, but also oats. My recommendation, or our recommendation is, Sukup has, I'm not going to just talk about Sukup because every other company provides the same type of floor systems, but they have a small grain floor that works really good for oats. But when we're working with cereal rye, the holes are still a little bit larger, or large enough that rye will fall in and get caught in them. So, Sukup has developed a new floor, it's called the rice floor. The diameter of the air holes are smaller yet. And that's what I would recommend in any new construction that you are going to be doing, that you think that you may remotely be growing a small grain. Okay? I don't think they're that much more expensive than chisel cut, maybe a little bit. I don't think it's any more expensive to go to a rice floor from a small grain floor, and your airflow is still the same. You still have the same amount of air going through these floors, it's just what the size hole it's going through. So that's where KFS comes in, and that's why they sponsor it. I also want to listen to TJ this morning, Saddleview, that also helps sponsor this event. And that's where all of our non-species cover crops that we do not grow here, we get most of that through their company. And the third one, and I have a group sitting right here, is Midwest Aviation. You guys want to raise your hands? These guys, there's actually 2 pilots in the room. If you have cover crops that are applied by us, the 2 gentlemen in the middle, we got the old guy, Ken, I call him the old, and we got the young buck that just started a couple years ago, Mitch, flying. And we got a ground crew of Wayne, and the head honcho, Amanda, who keeps them all in line, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But this company really does a great job for us. I think we set records of how fast you guys can fly. I think this year, one day, we flew on almost 5,000 acres with 2 planes. It's amazing. And they do a good job. TJ talked about the drones and going around edges. They are so conscientious, they want to see any fields that they didn't get covered completely. But there are some fields that they can't cover completely, unless they want to fly into trees and wind towers and all that stuff. But they're really a great crew to work with. And so if you ever want to put a face to the plane that's above your fields, they're sitting right there. Okay? And then I also want to thank Bourbon again for the meat. Give them a round of applause. That was pretty good meat, wasn't it? Okay, I guess Josh, this is where I want you to, this is going to be more reactive, interactive, guys. There is a pad of paper in front of each one of you. And a pen. Except for maybe that back table came in late. You guys luck out, or we should give you a couple. Oh, you got some of your own. All right. We need you to write down what you want to talk about this afternoon. Okay, I want you, as we start here, we've got about, 45 minutes or so. We're going to talk before a break. I want some questions that are written down, and we'll collect them at break, and then we'll talk about that in the last session. Because I hope you came here to learn something. I hope you came here not just to have free food. I know some of you probably did. Maybe all of you did, I don't know. But unless you let us know what you want to talk about, we can rant and rave, and you get absolutely nothing out of this. I think we've had a great session so far. Great day. I've had a lot of compliments. I think the 2 presenters did a great job. So, actually we had 4, didn't we? Yeah, the 2. I still can't say enough because I am so confused when it comes to the funding programs. That sheet, there's more back there. It just tells all the details. I can't say enough of it. Enough of that. Should we get started, Josh? Okay, sure. You got a clicker? Okay. Martin talked a little bit about termination, right? What have we been preaching almost ever since we started? When do we like to terminate? Let's just talk about rock. What have we been preaching? Because what I want to show or prove to you that what we may have said back when we started this whole thing back in 2012-13, when we started with that group of 5 or 6 neighbors in my office, we started talking about how we're going to deal with this cover crop, what we're going to do with it. We have changed some of our recommendations. Okay? If you listen to us speak in the past, what have we always said? When should we plant and when should we terminate?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Yes, for the beginners, didn't we? Okay? This is going to be a really interesting group because we have the beginners, where we have the cover crop 101 people, and we have people that have been doing this cover crop ever since 2014 or 15 or 12 or whenever we started. And then we're talking cover crop 501, right? But when we talk about beginners, we always want to say, until you get your comfort level, terminate early, right? Okay, that's what we used to say when we started. What did we start saying maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago? Plant green, right? Exactly. There was a lot of reasons why we did that, and Josh's going to pick on that when he starts talking about planter attachments and talking about planter setup.
Which, thanks to Martin, he kind of went over some of that already. So.
Yes, he has. He kind of led us into our presentation. But, as Martin also said, what did he do with his clover this last fall after the oat production? What did he do? Yeah, he terminated it last fall, right? Had he been doing that in the past? No. Why did he terminate it this fall? Moisture. Dry. Exactly. So now, I blame myself for something. I kept preaching that we can still grow, we can still plant green, we don't have to terminate right away. The rye is going to bring moisture up. Because that's what I was always told. From the producers in southern Iowa, Missouri, into Tennessee, Kentucky, we never have problems with moisture when we let the rye go green and let it get big and then we terminate it, because it's always drawing moisture up. And that's true if there's moisture down below. Did we have that this spring? Are we going to have that this spring? We don't know. But I will walk you through a couple situations where we didn't terminate early enough.
And use the wrong product.
And use the wrong product. Because guess what? We are still making mistakes. You never stop learning.
It's not a mistake, it's a test plot.
That's true.
Research, exactly.
Yeah, we used to talk about all the mistakes that we did, and we had so many sometimes we had to say, well, that's just research, or that's our next test plot. But we're going to talk about that we have to be conscious of what we have to work with, and it's not the same method or procedure every year. We have to worry about what's going on, especially with moisture. And I didn't think I'd ever have to say that, but I'm saying that we really have to watch that, and we really have to manage that. Otherwise, we could get into some trouble. And you're going to see some pictures today that I hope you will never see in your field. Okay? Yep, go ahead. Maybe a couple years ago, you can go to the next one, we talked about index. What was my goal? And if you guys have listened to me speak, what was my goal before I retired? Anybody remember?
Not use chemicals.
Yep, not use chemicals. Very good, Landis. We were going to use cover crops to manage our weeds, okay? And by doing that, we were going to have to do some crimping. And of course, I'm not going to go through all the history of our crimping. We've done some really stupid things there too. We have moved on to now indexing and actually in-row crimping. Okay? Just look at what's going on here. This is this is where we plant 3 rye rows that are 7.5 inches apart. We block the unit every 30 inches, and then we plant the corn into that. This is actually a picture of a bean stubble strip where we're going to be planting into that gap where there's no rye. Okay? This is on May 7th. Whoops. That's all right, you can stay there. There you go. The next one is in corn stubble going to beans. Same day, same thing. Do you remember what it looked like? Well, you can actually see it in the corner of the pictures. What's the difference in the stand between the corn stalks and the bean stubble? No difference?
Population.
Population? Everything was put on the same population and the same depth. Martin talked about maybe we shouldn't be following the corn with oats. And we see the same thing here. The worst thing with this is my center row of cover crop, or ours, is right on top of the corn row. What kind of seed to soil contact do I get with rye? Not very good. 0. Yeah. And you can actually see it. So that's what it looks like, okay? Come on, Josh. This is what it looks like when we planted. Actually, it's May 7th. I'm sorry. I don't know why there's a 17 in there.
3 dates, right?
Yeah.
It was beautiful planting. What I like about the indexing is you're not fighting the rye rows like we have with broadcast seeding on the plane, or if you're drilling like us at 7.5 inches at an angle, you're always running in another rock. It's really easy to set the planter in an index like this.
Yeah, you know, we should have learned that from the Amundsen's and the Norbies and the Green Country Farms, because they've been doing this for years. They're actually planting cereal rye at a 15-inch planter.
As well as the Olsons, they've been doing it.
Yep, Olsons do.
So.
You know, eventually we learn, okay?
I'm trying to sell you the drill.
I know. Is it still for sale? That's good. I'm glad you sold it. Okay. Go ahead, Josh. This is drone pictures from Rachel.
Good job, Rachel.
Yeah, she did some great photography work with her drone. And as you can see, as she gets higher, what sparsely that rye looks like in the corn stalks. Now, we still say a little is better than nothing, right? But am I going to control weeds with that kind of stand? And what am I trying to do? I'm trying to control weeds. I need a stand that I can crimp down with a mat to keep the weeds down. Now, this is probably enough stand to keep a lot of our small seeded broadleafs. There's enough of lilipathic effect there, but it's not enough to keep it from later in the season. So, okay. So it looks close up. Very nice planting conditions. Perfect. It was great. That's what it looked like on June 1st before I crimped it. How many of you would do this? Okay, Josh. That's good. I like that. What's the rye doing? It's headed out. Of course, our corn is nestled in there really nicely. But what's happening that I don't realize right now? Moisture. Yes. Okay? That's the same day we crimped it. Now, we made a mistake here too, because in these in-row crimpers, you can put knives on them. And I thought, well, we're going to just do this. We're going to cut this rye off. I kind of want it to grow back. Just keep developing a rye crop there, and hopefully I'll keep the weeds down. But what was that going to do? Take moisture. Yeah.
And a lot of it.
A lot of it. Every time I think I probably crimped it 3 times. Did a beautiful job taking the weeds, and actually there wasn't a lot of weeds out there. I kept cutting the rye off because I cut it off before it got to be mature or hard dough, so it would continue to grow back. But every time I did that, It took more water. Yes. It does a great job. This is what it looked like when it was smaller. I don't have any good pictures as it better. We'll compare with another field that we had some problems on. So it does a nice job. You see that? That it's nestled in there. It looks great. But it's not a program that can be used in low rainfall environments. Okay? All right. Now I think we go to our second. I like our title. Failed herbicide. Okay, now we're going to give you a little, this is a whole different farm, whole different field. I'll give you a little bit of what happened. Josh planted it, no-till planted it. It has rye. We had drilled it the fall before, a beautiful stand of rye on the whole field. He planted on the 5th of May.
Planted all the beans. This field is still strip cropped, 8 rows of corn, 8 rows of beans all the way across the field. Planted all the beans first, got half the corn planted, and then we got that 4.5 inch rain the next day. And I was rained out and went back in on the, what did I tell you, the 18th?
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was like the 20th we planted the last of the corn.
Yep. So we had 2 different plant dates out here. And then we used Liberty as a burn down with Outlook as a pre-merge herbicide.
Yeah, my great idea. We should.
The idea was to get away from using glyphosate over and over and over again, so we wanted to mix up our chemistries a little bit. This year was not the year to do that. For all of you that are live out in our neighborhood saw that, and I actually quit driving by it for 2 months. I couldn't stand it. It was that bad.
Me too. It was awful. I side dressed on June 7th the corn. I knew something was going on. It didn't seem to be that the rye was dying very well. And if you look at this picture on June 8th, if you look close enough, and it's going to be awful hard for you to see that, there's a corn row right in there. Can you point that out, Josh?
Yeah, I am over here.
Okay, there's corn right in there. But look at what the rye looks like. Is it dead? We thought it was dying. I really did. I really thought it was dying because it was turning that off color, and I thought, well, maybe Liberty's taking longer to die, it'll kill it. So I thought, well, we'll let it go. Go to the next one, they can actually see what it looks like close up. That's what the corn looked like. It looked good there. Yeah, it looked good compared to some days. But what happened is we still thought it was dying. We thought the rye was dying. Until we had a 0.2 of an inch. I don't remember what night it was. It must have been right before. If you go to the next slide, I think, Josh. Oh, before we get there. When we were in this, I was even wondering if this corn was going to survive. It was the first part of June. I thought, well, maybe we should think about replanting. Maybe we should kill the corn and just start over. Because this is what it looked like. But if you look at this, I did a little bit of a test. I wanted to see if a rain would resurrect it. This is what was the afternoon of the 8th. If you look at, Josh, you want to point out those 3 corn plants between? I put 2 flags. There's 3 corn plants in between. Look at the middle plant. What does that look like? It's really suffering, isn't it?
Death warmed over.
Really pale, really wrapped. And I thought, well, 1 inch of rain is about 28,000 gallons per acre. Okay? So if I could get 2 milk jugs full of, or 2 gallons of water, how much area would that cover? And that's what I did. I went out there and poured 2 gallons of water in that same area, which would include these 3 corn plants. I thought, if this doesn't resurrect it, then a rain is not going to resurrect this thing. And if you want to forward to the next one, this is at 7:34 the next day. What's the corn look like now?
There's that middle corn plant that looks so bad.
Wow! I mean, this is not only on when we should terminate rye, this is on how resilient our corn is. Okay? it's showing us two different things going on there. But look at what happened in less than about 12 hours with a little bit of water. That's only 1 inch of water. Okay?
So the next step we thought, okay, this dry is half dead. Let's cut it off with a roller crimper, get some light down to that plant, and try to help get some heat out. So I went through with our in-row roller crimper, and I cut all this dry off across the whole field. I was out there for a day and a half doing it, but hoping that would help things out here. Well, it really didn't.
No, it didn't. Now go to the next slide. I'm trying to think of it. Okay. On the 19th, I think it was probably the 17th, the night of the 17th. And it's really interesting because I'd be walking down our stairs from our upstairs. We had a 2-story old house. And every morning I'd come down the stairs and I'd look across and I could see this field. And it seemed to be getting browner and browner, you know, it looked like it was dying, until one night we had a 0.2 inch of rain overnight. I came down the stairs, looked out the window. Oh my gosh. The field had turned green. So I think what was happening, the rye was not dying from the herbicide, it was dying from lack of moisture.
Well, we dinged it with a herbicide.
A little bit, but we didn't kill it, right? So then we decided we better spray it. So then we sprayed Roundup. And it did kill it eventually. And then I got so concerned, guys and gals. And I'm going to tell you what I saw. I thought we should try to supplement a little more nitrogen to help the corn get through this thing. So what we did, we took a spinner, high clearance fertilizer spreader, and I slowed the PTO down, so I was just spreading 20 feet, so just the corn strips, as much as I could. I was probably spreading some over that. And I got the rig from the Osage Corps about 5 or 6 o'clock. They told me they wanted that spreader back by 9 o'clock the next morning because somebody else wanted to do the same thing. I had about 200 acres to spread over, so I went all night. What I saw, I should have taken pictures. When I started just before dark, the corn was wrapped tighter neck, looked as pale as ever. And every hour that the sun had been under, the corn row, and you couldn't see the corn rows for the stubble of the rye. Every hour I went, the more of the row I could see. The corn, by morning, I could see the rows completely, and it had totally unraveled or uncurled or whirled, whatever you want to say, and it actually looked dark green. So to me, I really had hope that this was going to turn out better than we thought. Okay? So I'm not going to tell you it was the top. Well, that's what it looked like on the 26th. As you can see, where he crimped and rolled it, it kind of died. You can actually see the bean strips on the sides are still green. Our rye is still green. Because when did we spray the Roundup?
20.
Yeah, 19. It's taken a while for it to kill. Okay, go to the next one, Josh. This is June 30th.
Remember, June 30th, this corn is barely at our knees.
Who would have been proud of that field?
Not this guy.
No, we weren't either. Not at all. Okay, next one. That's what it looked like on September 15th.
And I should have been standing beside it because most of that corn wasn't over my head. It was right at my eyes. So the big deal going on in the corn industry right now, part of it is short corn, right? You could make short corn if you want to. Now, for you that have been in the seed industry or even in farming, you should know this. Josh, if you want to point out that ear height on the left-hand, are those ears on the same plane? Because what's happening is some of the corn is feeding the primary ear, which would be the taller ones, the higher ones. But a lot of the corn had to go to its secondary ear. But it went there, and it made a pretty good secondary ear. Okay? The worst thing is the secondary ear on a short plant to begin with is we had corn ears touching the ground. Talk about pushing
into the dirt, we had the feeder house tipped as far as we could have had to try to pick that corn up. So we were running, I was running on the skids on the rollers, and actually the gathering chains were probably just about touching the ground ahead of them.
It's a good thing it was a dry fall.
It was not fun. Now, did this yield as much as, we lost it, as much as our other corn? No. No way it could, right? No way. But it was still twice as good as we thought. It's still, I think that field averaged of 190?
192, I think.
Yeah.
This is what it said.
192. Now, it wasn't our 230, 240 corn that we had some.
So I mentioned earlier that I planted the east half of the corn after that rain. So it had only been in the ground about a week. It was just spiking through when we terminated the rye the first time. And that was pretty normal yields actually over there. It was the stuff that got planted before the rain and had a good start. And then we had the issue with the herbicide and the rye not dying. So it was very interesting to watch each half of the farm, plant date and termination date.
So here we go. Okay, remember my experiment with the crimping of the rye? Remember that one back when I started? Okay, that corn looked just like this corn on this other farm. This is Josh's field. Josh made a conscious decision. We talked about this more than one time, what we should do. He said, we're going to leave it. We're not going to replant the corn. Me, on my corn, on that, when I was crimping, I said, I can't stand it. I don't think it's going to make it. I actually killed the corn off and replanted beans on the 3rd of July. Who do you think came out better? Anybody want to guess? Josh did. 192 bushel corn, I had 42 bushel beans. Now, 42 bushel beans on those little strips that I had is really good for the 4th of July or 3rd of July, isn't it? But it's a testament, and what I want to say is, with moisture, we're showing these things to you because we want to impress upon you that if it's dry, we need to be terminating it sooner than later.
The biggest thing to keep in mind with the cover crop system is we need to adjust as we go. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We put a plan in place in the spring and we stick to it all year. No, we need to make adjustments throughout the year.
And the other thing I want to talk about is resiliency of your soil once you get it more healthy. I almost would guarantee you, if this would have happened on a full width tillage and never had cover crops, never had no-till, never had strip till, whatever, that we wouldn't have ended up with a yield like that. I really believe that because a lot of our other experiments where I think it's a bust, it'd be sometimes the best crops we've ever had because of what the soil is giving us, how it's getting it back to us because it's more resilient. So those are the things I want you to take away from this presentation. Don't ever do what we just did. Okay? Because I did have one other customer, when we were fighting Josh's situation with the Liberty or glufosinate, they had done the same thing. They had rye, real heavy stand, conventional corn. Their chemical rep said that they could kill the rye with Accent. Guess what? It did not kill it. And they actually went in and ripped it up and replanted corn. And he told me that corn was going about 170 this fall. Okay, I don't like those phone calls. But there is always a way that we get through it. I think as we learned here, it's not as bad as what we thought it was going to be. So this is our takeaway between the two different herbicides. So Josh, I'll let you talk about that.
So the main ones we've been using is glyphosate and glufosinate. Roundup or Liberty are the trade names, brand names. The big thing is Roundup is a translocation product. Liberty is contact. So we need lots of water and we need lots of sunshine for the Liberty to really work well. I think that was part of our issue this spring. We had the heat, but we didn't have clear sunny days. We had all that smog, if you will, or smoke from up north coming down, and the day we sprayed that, it was really hazy. It was warm and bright out, but it was really hazy, and I think that was part of the issue. Because we were spraying 20 gallons of water, full load of AMS, so 3 pounds an acre, and we have our hooded sprayer, and I was getting covered because I was actually bending the rye over with the hoods. So that whole plant was basically had moisture on it all the way up and down. So covered, I don't think was an issue. But the big one I want to point out is what I noticed this year, and I've had a couple other people comment on, are the slower kill products like Liberty. That rye tends to stand up all season long. Where when we use a Roundup type product, that rye seems to kind of melt and lay down and give us more of a mat. And I think that's really what we want when it comes to a weed control standpoint, is we want that rye to really lay down for us and give us a mat, not be standing up in the air. Because on the one field I burned down with the Liberty, that rye was almost as tall as a beanstalk harvest this fall. It never melted down. And part of that was because we didn't have any moisture. But still, it stood there all year long versus the stuff we had burned off with Roundup.
You guys have any experience with glyphosate or Liberty on cover crops?
Josh knows here.
The one question I had is, are you addressing the pH in your water? You had AMS in there, but are you conditioning it any other way?
Nope. I've never had an issue before. The water isn't extremely hard. It's a little hard, but it's not outrageously hard from the last time I tried it. So usually the AMS is enough in that tank to not have any issues.
Did everybody hear the question? He asked if we were conditioning our water, where our pH was. And Liberty is very sensitive to that. But we had AMS in there, we thought that would be enough, I guess. Cool. Good question.
And that's representation of what I saw this fall. Top would be the Roundup and the bottom would have been Liberty. The way it looked. Okay, any other questions on the termination from this year, issues you guys saw, what you're thinking for this year before we move into next? Yeah, go ahead.
How much thicker do you think the cuticle was on that rye this year versus a normal year?
You know what it reminded me of? Was a water hemp plant. Really glossy, really thick, heavy.
Got that blue color to it?
Yep. So I would say it was a lot thicker this year than it is in past years, just because of the shear. It was trying to protect itself from losing water, I think. Yep. That's a very good point. But then again, that also leads us to remind us that we're extremely dry this spring and we have emerged weeds. They're going to be the same way. So we need to catch them smaller. Smaller than
Also along those lines, we have seen experience in Kansas and Nebraska with water hemp using like 1 to 2 ounces of fulvic acid helps that penetrate better.
Penetration on the cuticle.
So you can actually reduce the amount of Roundup you use even in dry conditions.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. Might have to try. Anything else before we move on? Okay. Martin alluded to, or was talking about, I should say alluded, he talked about some of the stuff I'm going to talk about now, and planting green and into a heavy cover crop, whether it's no-till or strip-till. Variety of pictures here. A couple of these are quite a few years old. We haven't planted corn with the IH planter for what, 3 years now? Maybe 4 years?
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed.
Like your IH planter. I had green tech in the cap, so that's what I went with.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And then on the bottom left there is same, when we were doing those pictures from earlier on the indexing, it's a drone shot, so. We tried to rank these in order of what we think is most important, and it's a lot of give take on how to rank them, but this is probably the big one. The reason Dad likes his case planter so well is they come from the factory with an offset disc opener. So you always have a leading edge just like a coulter out front. So there is usually never a need for a no-till coulter on our case planter because you have a leading edge already. John Deere, Kinsey, it's a true V. There is no leading edge. So you tend to have a lot more issues keeping that unit in the ground when we're no-tilling or under heavy cover crops. There are options out there. The main one right now that I know of is the prescription tillage planter blades. And one of them, 15 inches on the one side and 14 3/4 on the other. What that gives you then is a leading edge. And it's significantly reduced how much downforce I need to run on the planter in order to keep that planter unit at the depth I want. So we have some choices out here. Dad would say buy a red planter.
Oh, no, not necessarily. What was the gentleman that came in the other day?
That was a Kinsey pusher unit planter, and he had got on lovely Ag Talk. not my favorite platform, but it's out there. And they are putting one case disc opener on one side of the Kinsey planter because it's bigger than the Kinsey disc to create an offset disc for beans.
Yeah, that was I had never heard of that. Anybody else doing that out here? Putting a case IH blade on a Kinsey or maybe a John Deere would work too. I don't know how that all works.
And what I have seen in our operation is by getting that offset, that leading coulter out there, or that leading disc, is we don't need a no-till coulter, even under a no-till scenario out there. So it reduces horsepower, and like Martin said, we get into that spring and that no-till coulter does nothing but brick slab, wet mud. And that's what I wanted to try to avoid here.
Then we start building mud up on the gauge wheels, and we start losing depth and all that good stuff. So if we can keep it as clean and dry on top, without a no-till coulter, that's the key for us. Now these are probably a little more expensive, and I don't know if they wear quite as well. I think Olson's will say they don't wear as well. Yeah.
And I would agree with that. The only thing I will say is the bearing seems to be better in these than on the stock ones a little bit. They seem to hold up a little bit better. But the blade itself, they claim it's supposed to last longer than stock blades, but I would tend to disagree with them on that.
I'm going to put a disclaimer.
What do you think? They last as long?
They don't
or-
last as long. There's no run out on them. If you go up to the Deere store and pick up 32 blades, there's going to be quite a bit of run out between them. The bearing's better, but yeah, they probably don't last as long. We run the same size, and when you set them up, you tighten them down so it points to the valley of the next one, and I would say have less of the downforce medium that way too.
I would agree with that.
Now, I did hear from a gentleman that they actually give you a refund or a trade-in value if you send them back to the company. Either one of you guys ever done that? I didn't know they did it either, but I heard that just the other day at a conference where I was at. That you actually send them in and I don't know, they somehow retool them and redo them and then send them back. So look into that if you're using them. And once again, a disclaimer, we are not here to try to sell equipment or parts.
It's on what what has worked for us. Next thing would, go ahead.
Help with hairpinning?
We like to take care of the hairpinning with the row cleaner up front. Move that residue out of the way so we don't have that.
They
But-
do slice through it a lot better.
Correct, that's just what I was gonna say, is you do slice it like a no-till coulter then, so you don't have near the issue down in that trench if you're not getting a full clean with your row cleaner. Down pressure would be the next one. I really don't care per se what down pressure you're running, as long as if you're running the old springs, it's the heavy duty down springs in no-till scenario. The two springs on each side, the lightweight springs probably are not enough. So it's nice to run the heavy down pressure springs if you're still on springs. The airbags down the bottom was our first step away from the springs, still out there, guys still use them. Gives you that adjustability from the cab, or if it's a new enough system, it'll, you set it and it'll adjust for you. And then of course the newest one would be the hydraulic, which gives you more row-to-row control, versus the air is usually all half of the planter or the whole planter at one time. So biggest thing is make sure you've got enough down pressure on that planter to get it in the ground. And I'll talk about it later, but one of those things to help with down pressure is actually moving the row cleaner off of that planter unit and mounting it to the frame. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Well, it's the next one, row cleaner. So like I said, we fought it on my Deere planter where the Yetter row cleaners were mounted right to the front of the row unit. I wanted to clean harder than I was, but when I did that, I started pushing my planter unit out of the ground. And I had to run extreme downforce to keep it in the ground, and it was just a balance back and forth that was a mess. So last year, I actually put reveals on from Precision Planting. That would be the top right picture, and that is mounted by your parallel link arm. It was amazing how much down pressure I could back off once I took that row cleaner off that row unit. I think I was less than half of what I was running before and still getting my depth control where I wanted it to. Secondly, I was able to control that from the cab because it is an air system. So I can make adjustments on the fly rather than going back there and moving the pin. That gets over, even on an 8-row planter. And for the guys running 16, 24 row planters, how many times do you really get out into those row cleaners when they're pinned or screw adjust? Maybe once or twice. So it's nice to move up to an air system or a hydraulic controlled system so you can have that adjustability from the cab. The one on the top left is Dawn's unit, and that is also a row or a frame mounted row cleaner that I know a couple guys run in the room and they really like too. The reason I went to the reveals is I wanted to try that gauge tire out to see if I could keep a more consistent depth with that row cleaner rather than sometimes plowing. And it does follow contour very well. Granted, I don't have a lot of contour, but it does do a very nice job. Down at the bottom would be your more traditional ones. Both of those are getter units. The one on the left would be a floating row cleaner, and then the one right is the old screw adjust. So if you're using those, I urge you to get out and adjust them for the conditions you're in.
And what we learned in strip tilling days was that a pulled residue manager is much better than a pushed one.
The two on the bottom are a push. The two up top, you're pulling that row cleaner.
Especially if you're looking for something that's gonna flow to the contour of the ground that you're working with, the pulled one is always better than a pushed one. Like I said, we learned that a long time ago, and we never had the opportunity to have one on the planter until these two came out. To me, this thing is really, really one of my most important things on a planter. When he went through the standing stocks planting beans with the John Deere, and I still do a little bit with the International. My International is an 800. It's probably almost 50 years old now.
As he's talking about it, the one on the left is from the spring. That is the reveals running. It's hard to see from the video, but if you look behind him, on the bottom of the stocks that was created.
And he's not furrowing, he's not moving any dirt, or soil, I should say. But I was so impressed with these residue managers or row cleaners that I almost ordered a set for my 50-year-old International planter. In case I were
It's
to...
not quite 50 years old because that's an 81 model. And I was born in 81, not 50 yet.
That's true. My math sometimes isn't correct. So 40 some years, how's that?
The planter's the same age as me.
But the units would have cost about 5 times more than what my planter would be worth, so we're going to let him plant some beans with his planter. So. But that's one thing that I don't usually really get excited about attachments to planters. This one, I really got excited as I watched him work in the field. It was amazing. That's enough, I guess, on that.
Okay, at the rear of the planter with the closing system, that biggest one for me is, I don't necessarily, there's a couple of these I like better than others, but the biggest thing, if you're going to be no-tilling or high residue scenarios, we need to go to a notch closer of some sort. We need to get away from the smooth. And I would suggest we don't run one smooth and one spiked, we run 2 spikes. I like the Getter Twisters or the Furrow Cruisers from Copperhead. It's a poly wheel, and the nice thing is you have a shoulder there so they don't get super aggressive. They're only going to go about 1 inch deep with that spike. Versus more like what Martin had on his Kinsey planter, that's super aggressive. You really got to be careful with those.
And the only thing I had to do on my International planter, when we went to no-till and to cover crops,
Here we go.
is add the covering disc. Remember, we have on an International, if you know what it looks like, it's got 2 inverted cup bolters that push the dirt back together, right? But when you get into heavy root structures like raw roots and like that, it didn't want to close very well. So we added these spiked ones, which you can buy quite reasonable. And that's the only thing that I did to my planter to get started.
He likes to give me a hard time for it. So the top is the Twisters, the Furrow Cruisers from Copperhead are down here, very similar. Basically, those are the same one, other than Getter got around Copperhead's patent by twisting the spike. So, I'm not a huge fan of the old curve tines from Dawn. I don't think they give us quite enough crumbling action when we get in those really tough conditions, especially in a line of cover crop. So, questions, comments?
Okay, you guys, a lot of you guys have been doing this. What is the best thing you put on your planter yet? I'm gonna pick on a few people. Where should we start? Well, we always pick on the Olsons, we don't do that.
Smart firmers.
Okay?
And are you doing anything with those smart firmers, the data off of them? You using it for anything?
No, but I wasn't in the planner, I was just watching the data from the pickup.
Okay.
So you can tell them to stop planning, so.
Well, actually, no, it was the rainfall getting us, and I've watched the moisture level change, realized we
Okay.
got it.
Yep.
But we'll be prescription planning with it next year,
Okay.
this year.
So what was it recording, Carl?
Organic matter, soil temperature, and soil moisture.
Okay.
Curtis,
Precision village openers.
the openers.
Oh, okay. Can you tell us more how you liked them?
A sidewalk compaction, cutting any residue that the cleaners didn't get.
And to claim the fame for those STPs, they're supposed to leave a
W trench.
W trench on the bottom, and it's supposed to also scarf or scrape the sidewall so it doesn't, like you said, doesn't have the sidewall compaction, that smooth wall.
Crumble that sidewalk.
Yeah.
What it does is it really turns that true V planter to mimic a case planter on the way it digs when you're looking for the seed. You don't have that real defined groove like you tend to get with the true Vs.
I wasn't going to show you this picture, but are we almost done?
I got
Oh, I got
pictures
more.
next.
Go way to that last. Just go ahead. Go to the one where we had where it was planted in the heavy rye. We had that sidewall compaction. Now, point underneath this left. Well, you can see it there too. But this is the first time you can see it right there. Yeah, right there. That's the planter. You see how bad that's been? That was planted too wet, guys. And we feel a little sorry about it, but that it was planted by somebody that wasn't used to planting no-till, especially in the rye, and especially corn. They had been planting mainly on strips. This was a beautiful rye and clover color. It was awesome. But they jumped the gun a little bit. Because when I went up there, you could see most of the trench was open. I'm surprised they got as much as they did out of it, but it wasn't through the whole field. It was more where the high clay content, of course, is.
It was definitely by soil type.
Yeah, but we don't want to see that, okay? There is some patience that we have to have, especially when we're going into no-till. That's probably something, the biggest thing that we have to learn as no-tillers coming from full-wet tillage is patience. If you don't have patience, you can alleviate that a little bit or mitigate that by strip tilling. We got two operations right there that do a lot of custom strip tilling, and that will help us dry out and warm up in the spring sooner. If we don't have that patience or we don't have the time, if we got to run a lot of acres, I would suggest not no-tilling everything and get started sooner. We're doing the same thing. We went to almost all no-tilling, and now we've gone back to maybe strip tilling about a third.
That's more than that.
Maybe a little more than that.
Nice.
Because we can get started sooner. We have to wait 2 to 3 days longer if we're going to go to no-till versus our strip till ground. It's just simple. That's pretty simple. That's all there is. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but when you talked about, when Curtis was talking about sidewalk compaction, that was a big issue sometimes.
And I love what Martin said today, that this should be a requirement if you're gonna no-till corn in the cover crops, is nitrogen with the planter in a bank tank. He is not wrong. We thought when we first started, you heard us put on your 10 gallons, 15 gallons, and 32 with your chemical, and that's enough. Well, it's enough nitrogen, but it's not in the right place. It gets too much of it gets tied up between that row as we terminate that cover crop. So we need to, if you can, we need to try to put some nitrogen on with planter. System-wise, I don't know if we really need the double disc openers or even singles like we used to use out front. I think dribbling it out the back is good enough. Especially when you throw in some sulfur with it and we're banding it, very little chance for loss. If you want to put a lot of nitrogen on with the planter, or all of it, I actually have a customer, not around here, but another one I have on the precision ag side of the business. They are using conceals from Precision, and they put 100% of their N on the planter, 100%. And they have for probably 20 years now. And it takes a big commitment with labor to get nitrogen to the planter when they have the side quest saddle tanks, so they're only hauling 1,200 gallons at a time. They run two 24-row planters, and each one has a dedicated tender truck to it, doing nothing but bringing them 32%. But it does work, and it's the only pass they make on the nitrogen.
Question I think.
Yeah.
Would an early side dress be similar to roll band and
Only if you're Wyatt, if you are getting your coulter right beside the row, or you're using a wide drop right beside the row. In the center of the row, especially with liquid, we get no movement laterally until we rain. That's where the banded 2x0 behind the planter, or 2x2 with a disc or a coulter, gets it right next to that row for us. That's the only thing I don't like about that side dress pass. Even if it's early, we need moisture to move it to those roots. Because you think about the corn plant at that time, the corn plant's only this big, so our roots aren't a whole lot bigger underneath. And they're really more so going down than laterally spreading at that time.
And I would even add to even strip tilling. Even if you're putting nitrogen, some of your load in a strip, especially if you're going 7 inches or whatever in the spring, you still need a little bit of nitrogen to get that that corn root down to that nitrogen. So that banded nitrogen or ATS or whatever you're using will help that plant go or grow until it gets to that band of fertilizer you have down deeper in that strip. We still recommend that on, and actually he's been recommending on customers that are full wet tillage corn on corn.
Yeah, had one customer didn't believe me, and I finally convinced him to, he wasn't using his starter system anymore. I said, pull it out the back, do some trials. Full wet tillage, he was seeing anywhere from 5 to 10 bushel advantage in his corn on corn, with a banded versus broadcasting across the surface. That was enough for him, even though he got quite a bit of ground to cover, that was enough for him to say, I'm gonna do it.
And we're not saying to add more nitrogen than what you normally
20% of
should.
your total?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are not recommending adding an additional 20% to your total N program. It's just moving that nitrogen around and putting roughly 20% of it on with the plant.
Yeah. Keep that in mind. We're not promoting more nitrogen. Okay, just when we put it on.
So the other one that I've had guys do, because they didn't want to put it on the planter, they're actually either using a homemade wide drop system, or they're using a drop nozzle with a streaming, three-way stream nozzle on it with their self-propelled sprayers, and going and blowing it on right behind the planter to try to cover ground a little bit quicker and not have that planter stop and fill all the time. So it's another option, another way to try to do it.
That's soybeans, isn't it?
Yeah, that's from Nebraska, actually. That's one of their nitrogen studies in Nebraska for beans.
Josh,
Yeah,
with that three-way streaming nozzle,
Yeah.
how much of that is going to get caught in your cover crop residue?
actually, if you keep it fairly low to the ground, you don't get a lot of separation in that stream. The reason I want to run the three-way with the sprayer is you're going to be running on top of that row directly some of the time, so I don't want that full load right on top of the row, where when you use the triple stream, you're getting it spread out a little bit.
Or are you concerned with it being in the residue and not down on the?
You're going to have more of a chance to do that just because you got more movement in that boom and that drop moving around, but it's still, I think, better than broadcasting it across the whole surface. The only problem is it doesn't add another pass because you can't throw your chemical in it that way. So that's another thing to weigh out for you, too.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to it. When he puts it on the planter, and we would normally let the rye grow for another 2 weeks before we would terminate it in a normal year, when we have moisture. When I went out to either terminate or side dress, I could see exactly where his nitrogen band, because that rye was nice and green in that little bit of strip. I wouldn't be able to see the corn at all, but I could tell where the row was because that little strip of nice green rye. So I didn't see that being translocated into the rest of that rye. Okay?
Do you need
Yes.
the wide drops, do you need them every row, or can you go every other row?
I'm still a believer you feed every side, both sides of the row, every row.
It's back to side dressing either with a coulter machine or an ice machine. Do you go every other row, or do you go every row? I don't even like leaving the outside gaps. I will put a half rate on the outsides just so I get covered on both sides of the row.
I guess we've already talked about most of this, so. Martin talked about bands. I'm not going to touch on it again, but the big thing to remember is the later we let that rye grow, the higher the seed end, the more nitrogen it takes to break it down. So that's why we've been pushing to really put it in a band, because we tend to let that cover crop get a little bit bigger. We don't want to tie up all that nitrogen. We want the corn plant to happen.
Okay, then we use this also to, how do we plant our nitrogen application when? If we're terminating early, when it's smaller, you have that lower seed end, that nitrogen is going to come back to that crop sooner, right? But if we let that rye get to that head stage like we were showing earlier, or even longer, then it's going to take longer for that nitrogen to come back to our growing crop. So then all of a sudden, maybe we're not putting enough nitrogen on our crop at the right time. I mean, is it coming back to us when we want it? Or is it coming back too late? Or is it going to come back earlier? So now we need to change or adjust when we're going to put that nitrogen on. So this is a good guide from this. You have to use this plus weather, and you kind of can tell where we need the nitrogen and when we don't need it. But not as much.
So this slide's getting kind of old. I probably should try to redo this slide again and leave a test strip. But this was when we first started putting nitrogen on. Good cover crop, as you see, wasn't big by any means. And we sprayed this right behind the planter too. But I ran out on the last pass. And you can see when Dad came back to side dress ammonia, how poor that corn looked. And that year was a 32 bushel difference on that strip to either side of it. Now I don't think it's that big of an advantage every year, but this year that's what it was. So that's why I really pushed for guys to put it on the planter. So, and let you talk about this slide, and we get done with this, we'll take it.
Yeah, then we'll take a break. Some people, the biggest concern we had this fall was it's too dry to put cover crops on, right? Everybody see that? You heard that? Maybe some of you use that as an excuse for not to do it. This is one of our seed fields, and I'm not going to point out whose it is because it's not his fault. But if you notice how that seed rise, you see the nice dark green strips? Those are his side dress marks when he side dressed the corn that was ahead of this. So what's that telling us? The corn didn't use all the end, did it? So what's the rye doing? I always think of my rye or my cover crop as a bank. And what it's doing is it's saving my nitrogen or my nutrients so I can use them in the future. And this is a perfect example of why we need cover crops. Because I know if we have a wet spring coming off of our drought, we as farmers are going to get chastised because of the amount of nitrates that will be found in our water bodies, rivers, lakes, because what's going to happen is we're going to have all this extra nitrogen in the soil. We get our normal rains, everything will, leach? And we'll be blamed again for polluting the water sources of the Midwest until we use the cover crops to help mitigate that. So whether it's dry or whether it's wet, we need to be able to capture the nitrogen and nutrients that are being mineralized in the soil that our normal crops will not take up or they're already done. Whether it's been harvested or hasn't been planted yet. So we'll keep that in mind. Before we break, make sure you write some questions down so we can, because the next section is going to be all about you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about carbon intensity scoring. Okay, we're going to touch on that a little bit. But if you have something that you want us to touch on, don't be afraid to give us a question or two. We'll have a few minutes to work on when you get done for break. So thank you for that. A year ago when we had our annual meeting here, anybody here from last year? It's a little different this year weather-wise than last, isn't it? Kind of nice. Yeah, well, I don't care. I don't know how many questions we're going to have in this. So how many of you heard of the 45Z tax credit bill, or act? Okay. Some of you have, not all of you. And I don't think I'm going to try to explain it.
So you're going to let me do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this was in the reduction, or the Inflation Reduction Act. This is geared specifically really towards the ethanol industry, reducing their carbon footprint. there's still a lot of unknowns here. The base program has passed and is in place, but we still don't have all the specifics. Joe, have they said when the specifics are supposed to be to us?
No, it's the government.
It's the government. Very good answer. Who knows? But what this is really going to be geared towards the potential corn sales from the 24 crop. One guy explained it to us that everybody's corn will have a CI score next year, whether you know it or not. The U.S. Average for the carbon intensity score is 29.1 using the GREET model. That is the Greenhouse Gases, Regulated Emissions, and Energy Use and Transportation model.
Oh, that's what that means?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's so another one of those government lovely acronyms that we get to try to learn all the time. Right, Doug?
I always thought they said it was Greek, not Greek.
So far, as from my understanding, this is the model they're going to run with for right now. Who knows, it's the government that could make changes to it, but this is the model they are going to use. So what this gets into is there's companies out here that are starting to come to market basically, and they will help you do these scores. So you can then turn around whether they help you turn it into the ethanol plants that you are willing to market your corn to, or they will just automatically send it to all the ethanol plants. Don't know for sure, but that is kind of the goal here. The reason we want to bring it up today is you guys in this room have already, most of you have reduced tillage or are on your way to reducing tillage. You're using cover crops or thinking of using cover crops. Those all factor very well into this model.
Manure application is another one. It's a very important piece of this equation.
That is the one, probably the one part we don't necessarily agree with is how heavily it's weighted towards manure applications right now. If you start using litter, cattle manure or hog manure and for probably at least half of your nitrogen, it severely drops that carbon intensity score. And this is one program we want your score as low as we can get it. If you can get it below 0, the more that ethanol plant wants your corn because it's less carbon.
What if you feed it? There's nothing.
Nothing as of right now. The way the guy we talked to with one of the companies that's doing this program said ethanol had a better set of lobbyists in the federal government on the floor, and then the livestock guys didn't yet. My guess is where this is going, the livestock industry will have some form of this as well down the road.
Yeah, I would say there might be a carbon intensity score for your beef. And that would all be based on what you've been feeding them and how you've grown that feedstock.
Correct.
That would be my indication of what it's going to happen. If, like Josh said, in every industry eventually, every one of us farmers will have a CS score, a carbon intensity score. Yes, Bourbon?
Back up, I didn't understand what he was saying about manure. What does that do?
It drops your carbon footprint score because you're not using synthetically produced nitrogen primarily or commercially mined P and K products.
I like that idea.
The worst thing is it doesn't, what do I say? It doesn't figure in the amount of fuel it takes to load it and spread it and all that kind of stuff. It's just going off of, it's not using any carbon-based fuel, synthetic fuel to produce it, okay? That's about as simple and as easy as I can explain it, but there is quite an advantage to manure application. Yes?
You find a lot of those beef numbers get skewed because the majority of beef is fed on plains and irrigation is so heavy.
Yeah.
So we're fighting that here because we need that.
That's a good point. And earlier, what Carl was saying, especially in the upper plains where they use a lot of irrigation, so they use a lot of fuel, those numbers can be really skewed on the cattle side or beef side.
Corn production as well.
Yeah.
A lot of our negative numbers on ethanol come out of the high plains.
Okay.
It's a good point. Because yield is factored into this very heavily too, because it's all based on usage per bushel. So the more bushels you have, it helps wash some of that other stuff out and make it look lower as well. So this definitely is by no means a perfect model, but this is what we got right now.
Yep.
So like I said earlier, the estimated average for the U.S. right now is 29.1. It's a tax credit to the ethanol plant and it's a little over a nickel per CI point below that standard. That gets back. 0, of course, is neutral, and we want to be at 0 or below, because that gives us a better footprint. So I can talk about it for us. We're using tillage, using cover crops, and we're using fertilizer, or using animal manures for your fertilizer source.
And you'll see in the next slides, Josh will have some examples of different practices that are being used and what kind of CI score you would get. And if you go back, Josh, I want to show them how much they have figured that it's worth to the ethanol plants. Almost 5.5 cents per bushel for 1 point of CIS score. Okay? CI score, sorry. Acronyms are really weird for me. But anyway, that's how they figure what it would be for a total dollar figure per acre. Okay, just keep that in mind, that's how they do it.
So these are from topsoil, which is with Continuum Ag, is where we did the carbon score here. My carbon score with my current practices, this is at 250 bushel corn, so it's my yield goal corn, not necessarily what I'm actually getting every year, but it's my yield goal of 250 is 4.9. This is using strip till, not no-till, using the chemical and fertilizer program that I've been using the last couple of years on my acres, as an average. That's what my score was, 4.9. So if you look at it, they estimate that there's $1.31 there per bushel potential back to me as a producer. Now, that's the big caveat is we don't know where the ethanol plants, how much of that is going to end up making it back to the farmer. That's one of the big points right now that everybody's discussing on how much they're going to share or will be allowed to share.
Because we start off with that 327, there's been some numbers or percentages of what's going to be passed on to the farmer, and we're hearing probably no more than 50%. But I think if we get to close to 50% from the ethanol plants, that'd be a win. I don't think we're even going to get that, to tell you the truth, but that's what they've been telling us.
So just to compare, on the left is the score with my current practices, on the right is if I went back to full of tillage.
And no covers?
And no covers. So it jumps it from 4.9 to 18, approximately. So still better than the national average, but less dollars. They're talking about, now it's only 55 cents per bushel total.
And then you told me on this particular example that you didn't add any more fuel if you're doing more tillage and all that kind of stuff. So he's using the same amount of fuel per acre as he was doing with no-till or strip-till. Keep that in mind, so that's going to change that a little bit
And
more.
we'd probably bump it up into that low 20s if I would have went clear back and started over and brought my fuel usage back up. Yeah.
Your score is a 4.9.
Yep.
I'm guessing you didn't have livestock in there.
Nope.
So if you added that, I mean,
I got examples coming, Andy.
0 is the best. I mean, you can't
No,
go less than
you can go below
You can go
zero.
negative. Yep.
Yeah.
And if you go negative, it's even more money back to you. Bill?
Do they do anything for when the nitrogen is put on?
It's hard to tell in the model, but it is not heavily weighted to timing. It's more source, actually. Because I played around with switching it to all UAN in the spring versus side dressing and high dressing, and it actually went up, even though the UAN was going on at the same time. It was a higher score, or a worse score with 32 than it was with ammonia.
Back to your question on Bill, there's a lot of things that we don't think is kosher in this model, that we don't think is quite right, but this is what we got to work with now, and I'm hoping that they will change it as we go along to meet that. Yeah, Josh?
They're updating GREET annually, so by the time this comes out next year, the numbers are going to be different for a lot of those different sources.
Yep, that's good. Because we saw some really discrepancies when you start adding manure into even a regular conventional farmer, what the scores were ending up to be, and it's not where it probably should be. But this is a start.
So Andy, here's to you, I got all three main sources of livestock manure we have in this area. This is chicken litter, 2 tons. And so this is using my the strip till, my normal P&K rates, all that kind of stuff. The only thing I did was back off on nitrogen, my 60 pounds, and it dropped it to a negative 2.8 score. 3,500 gallons of hog manure, backing off that 60 pounds in, now we're at negative 4.4. And the same negative 4.4 for 10 tons of cattle. And That's still putting on commercial P and K. That's how heavily weighted it is towards livestock manure right now. Because they're not taking the full account of all the fuel that was used to produce that manure. So,
Josh, is that the topsoil that you were using, is that as close to the Crete model that we can get to find our own score? That's as
this is going to be a paid-for service.
Yeah.
There are some free models out there right now that I don't know how often they are updating them that you can go play with. This with topsoil with Continuum will be a paid service.
Okay.
This will be, right now, the way it looks, kind of a Cadillac, where the dealer inputs all your data that you give them, and you turn it around and get a report back with your CI score.
And the important part of that
The
report
cost?
too is there's gonna be reporting that's needed back to the ethanol plant.
Right, and
So-
these guys are gonna be taking care of that reporting as of right now, the way it sounds. The cost right now is $500, basically buy-in, if you will, and that's $5 an acre. That's current. They're saying it's gonna go up.
And I think we as a business, we're gonna get into this because I actually had one of my customers, I was working with her in Minneapolis at a conference, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, this is before I even knew what the number of the act was, and she says, Dean, you and your team are gonna have to figure out all the details of 45Z and tell us how to do it. And she was serious. And I didn't know if at that point whether we really wanted to get into that, but we think of it as another service that we can supply to you guys that you can gain some added income from, even if we don't always agree with how they're paying it or what they're coming up with numbers. It's just like certain farm programs. If the money is available, I'm never going to tell somebody not to take it. And that's how and I think we're going to go on. I think there's been quite a bit of interest today on it. So I think in the future we need to talk more. You need to come and talk to us. We'll walk you through it and try to get you set up so that you do have a CI score in the future.
More than likely, if you're one that likes to do your own computer work and do all your own data entry, there's probably going to be some other competitors out here that are less expensive. But there's always every level of guys, how much they want to do versus how much they don't want to do on some of these programs. It's going to come down to what you want to pay to do that.
I had one call. Kevin?
Yeah, just to clarify once, with the whole CI score and stuff, so as far as legislation and different things are with that 45Z tax code, the CI score is there and it is coming. The only question is how much of that is the producer going to get.
Right.
And that's where it's at right now, but it is for sure something that...
Yes, it's been passed, it's just trying to figure out all the fine details.
And I had a question just asked me, handed to me about and it was asked, is there anybody else going to be paying a premium for our low CI corn other than ethanol? And I think, yes, we are going to have some other ones. I think probably the feed industry might be the next one that might enter into it. I don't know about exports or anything like that, if anybody else is looking for that overseas, which I don't think will happen. But there's going to be some more in the future, yes. But right now, it's just ethanol.
How are the feed mills going to be able to compete buying corn against ethanol? They're the only ones getting it.
Well, it comes back to they would have to receive the tax credits. Just like the ethanol plants are going to receive the tax credits from the government, is how they're going to fund paying us more. Or they say they might even pass through the tax credits, but I think that's going to be a paper nightmare. And I think they're going to have to pay a premium. The feed company would do the same thing. They would get the tax credit from the government, and then they would be able to share that depending on what your CI score is. Now, that's my simple mind thinking. When it comes to government and everything else, it can be always different, okay?
They'll have to be competitive, all these different buyers, won't they?
Yes, they will. And the question is, well, they have to be competitive, right? I would say they have to be pretty equitable.
So that would go back to Eric's question. If we go to the feed mill, he'll be able to get the credit for his corn that he chops the silage.
Correct. Yep. And I think it's going to come to the cattle producer because then that CI score could follow through to when you sell those cattle. Is once again, my simple thinking.
I think it'll come on the actual meat side of it, is where you guys will get your credit, rather than up front on the grain or your feed stuff. It'll be at the end when you sell that animal, because then whether whoever is processing that beef or that swine, they can stamp right on that package of meat, low carbon footprint produced meat. So that's really where I think it'll come. It'll be on the Carl.
It's already there.
Is it already there?
I got a person call me next week.
Okay.
Through Select Sires and GNet and low carbon footprint.
Okay.
They're going to be bringing to it. They didn't even have it to release it as CBA yet.
Okay.
The details.
Right. Yep.
It's there already.
Okay.
Once the gate opens, I think it's going to be a stampede after that. So the way it looks to me. Yeah, Josh.
It's, to a certain degree, it's already there because there's companies like Transparency Wise and Better Fed Foods that are using blockchain that are partnered with like Farm Journal's, their beef program. So they're using climate smart commodity money to develop blockchain technology to trace this back to the farm from the supermarket.
Exactly. If everybody heard that. Okay, I think we'll move on to try to answer some of these questions.
You start there.
I'm going to start. Okay, I have a good one.
Okay.
He was kind of shy. He didn't want me to bring this up in front of the group. But I'm going to do it anyway because it's a good one. It says, I quote, with 4 years of planting cereal rye and no-till, the ground should be very mellow and soft, so there should be no concern about down pressure on the planter. And so why are you talking about down pressure? Awesome. And maybe we didn't preface our discussion about that before we even started. We never promote that you go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a planter to make it work when maybe the planter you had at the present time is going to work fine. Okay? Just like the old international planter that I used to start with, we didn't spend a lot of money on it. And I'm going to caution you, you don't have to spend a lot of money on this, all these attachments we talked about. We said if you need them to use them, and they're very nice, but you still have to have an ROI for that equipment. So, this gentleman recommended, maybe try your own planter, your own equipment, and adjust it to see how things work, and maybe you don't have to spend all that money. Because he talked about it, he doesn't even use residue managers anymore. He uses no-till coulters. He's a little different situation with twin row and things like that, but he brings up a good point that we didn't probably start out with, which we should have done. Because we never promote that you have to put these attachments on. Okay? Go ahead.
This one goes into the last couple of years, especially since we've been dry, about herbicide carryover. This one was specifically with S-metolachlor, dual 2 mag, applied late June. Could we potentially see issues with oats this spring due to dry weather? We very well could. It depends on the rain a little bit too. If it was just your pint that you're putting in for a little bit of extra soil control to get you to full canopy, probably not going to be an issue. The nice thing would be is if we continue getting some moisture to help flush some of these chemistries through. The dual isn't as bad as if that would have said flex number at the end of June. That would be very bad for corn or rye or oats. So just keep that in mind as we get dry here. Some of these late applications, yes, you have to make them for one reason or another because something didn't work. But think ahead then of what cover crop species you're going to use, or if you even can use anything or put anything out there, especially if you're thinking oats the following spring. Rye is going to be our most hardy against any of these chemistries, but still not bulletproof. So, and then in combination with that, talking about specifically with Kixor from BASF and killing broadleaf like winter camelina. Most of our pre-emerge chemicals that have some sort of burn down activity should do a pretty good job if it's early. If we start talking, we're getting in the end of May with these cover crops and they got some height to them, we may want to be throwing something else in there with that burn down to make sure we're getting some of those bigger plants.
Okay, here's a good one. First of all, it starts off with 60-inch corn, and it says if rye is kept raised 6 inches or less, does it still use as much water? What would it be comparable to the slides that I showed you, where I kept crimping it? It'd be basically the same thing as what you're doing. If you're grazing it, you're still taking that plant off, but then that plant has to recover, so it's going to draw more more water out of it. So it's going to do basically the same thing. Now, whether it's in a 60-inch row of corn or not, I don't know if that makes a difference. Anybody have any experience on that? You're still putting probably about the same number of plants of corn out there on a 60-inch row as you were with a 30. It's going to require just as much water. So I think we're going to see the same problem. I'm not for sure. I've never had experience, but as you keep grazing it, it's going to just take more water to regenerate. Just like when I was cutting it off with that crimper and it was regrowing again, it was taking a lot of water. A lot more than I thought. Good question.
Stick with the chemistry side here, and this is in dealing with, I'm assuming, rye for seed harvest. And it says, fungicide application, yes or no, pros and cons, is it a little better germ worth the cost for just a cover crop? From our standpoint as a cover crop dealer, yes, that extra germ is very important. Especially when we talk guys that are still enrolled in the government programs where we have to meet a minimum of 85%. And we have had years where our germ gets below 85% or something happened, or a herbicide application or a foliar fertilizer application was a little too late, and we knocked germ quite a ways back. So I would say it is very important to put a fungicide on our rye going for seed harvest. We have switched, and we are now focused on using a small grain type fungicide rather than what we've been using for corn and soybeans. The big one is for our seed head, or the seed head, the funguses we get up there that specifically affect our germ, one of those being Fusarium. And it has really helped from that standpoint when we do apply. We've been using Moravis Ace is what we've been using. So,
Martin, have you ever used Moravis Ace? Is that an issue on oats? So we saw like in rye, when we're using you were using Tilt
and Preaxor, but I've used others like Zoxy, Strobin, which also work pretty good. I don't stick with the same fungicide program for too many years. I'll switch modes of action. But on oats you're gunning for rust predominantly. Right. On rye, somewhat rust, not really. It's more Fusarium.
Because we've seen really improvement in germination by going to Moravis Ace over our normal corn fungicides.
Yeah, I haven't done that, used that on oats.
Good.
the other thing to comment on this, when we're buying cereal rye for people, if we're below 85%, there is a discount proportional to how far below we go from 85. So it is important to keep that germination up as best we can.
Any other questions on the fungicide?
Yeah, over the years, I've tried to resist using chemicals, period. Insecticide, we've always resisted that just because when you kill the bad ones, you're not discriminating, you're killing the good ones. Is that a factor with fungicides also, that we may be spraying multiple times with fungicides, we're in fact changing something that we shouldn't be changing in the soil?
There is some potential to that. I would say that's even more so the case when they were promoting, especially in corn, that V5 application of fungicides, where we have a lot of hit in soil, versus when we're spraying a rye crop that's this tall, or a corn crop that's tasseled, and we got all that leaf material, very little, if any, of that fungicide is actually hitting the soil. Because from the studies I've seen, very little of that fungicide ever makes it back out that root in the soil. And that's where I think could potentially change things, is if it's getting soil applied directly.
There's concern though, okay? There's concern about it.
And we're not saying people have to use it. No. Just from what we've seen with it, it is definitely has been a benefit to us.
Okay, then I have one on the difference between aerial seeding and drilled and best possible blends. And then he kind of answers his own question. he has it written down, goals. And one says fall growth to hold trash. Now, we don't call it trash anymore, so I'm going to call you out, and I don't know who did this one. It is residue. Trash is no good. Everybody's smiling. They've heard me do this before. Residue is something good. Trash is something bad. All of our residue is good, okay? So it's not trash. I'll get off that. Number 2 on his goal was weed suppression early season. And the third one was hold and scavenge nitrogen, or nutrients, excuse me. That is true. We have to put a goal on how we're going to use our cover crops and what's it going to do to our operation, or why do we want to use it. That will sometimes dictate if we use aerial or drill. We have this discussion all the time, right? Is it better? Yes, drilling is better. We're getting the seed to soil contact. But for some of this cover crop to get growth, by the time we drill it, we don't get enough growth, okay? The only way we can get a head start is by aerial application. Now, not all of it works good. TJ talked about a lot of things that probably you want to put out of the plane. And I was almost laughing, because you guys don't know what I'm talking about. You shouldn't put annual ryegrass through a plane. But we do, don't we? It's got to be a really calm day. And these guys know exactly what to do with it. But the other thing would be like sorghum sudan, things like that. Yes, we got to watch. We don't want to put them out of a plane. So it really depends on what you want for, as he said, fall growth. We probably want to go with a plane, get it growing sooner. Weed suppression early season, it really doesn't make any difference, I don't think, on that one. As long as we can get the drills in the field and get the cover crop applied. Now, there are some times where if we're combining until the ground is froze, we're not going to be able to put cover crop on, are we? I mean, we could spread it. We could have a plane come and put over the top again, I suppose, but they're always down south by that time. Hold and scavenge are nutrients. I don't think either way would work there. Any other additions to that one? Anybody else have any opinions on between drilled and aerial? They serve their purposes.
Sometimes you got to watch the CSP contracts.
Correct. That's the other caveat with some of these seeds are, and what you're using for your program on a multi-species mix, when it's a non-winter hardy event. Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to end.
Devin and Doug are good ones to talk to on that, and make sure you know when you have to have stuff out.
The only thing I'd ask from you guys is let us know if you extend the deadlines. Can we do that? You know, we would love to do that. Yeah. I'm going to end on this one. Unless anybody else has any questions, we're almost to 3 o'clock, but I had a real good one here. What did we talk about mostly today? Small grains. Why are we talking about small grains? Cover crop is one, yep.
Third crop.
Oh, third crop, yeah. But the question is, if we get you all excited, if we get you to plant small grains on all of your operations, especially when we get you to go to a third of your acres, where is it going to go? Why did oats disappear in the landscape?
No market.
No market. So why are we all of a sudden pushing this when we don't have markets? But yes, we do. And they are increasing in numbers. One, on the rye especially, is cover crops. We, just in our business, have to go out and buy rye from the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Canada to supply our needs, which we should be able to supply locally because we can grow it here. I would much rather 100% of our products from you guys, okay? But then they go, well, we pushed oats today. Well, guess what? We are getting into some emerging companies. We've all been in with TJ and Martin. Josh was involved in this, where we talked to a company that was supplying small grain products to pet food companies. We have a gentleman in our audience, graced his attendance with us, is in the process of building a oat plant in Albert Lea to supply, Landon, groats for multiple, where's it going to go?
We're working to build a plant in Albert Lea that will process about 2 million bushels of oats a year. That will take groats, and it supplies them to CPGs on the coast that are looking for the premium, domestically sourced, gluten-free product that we can provide here that they can't provide from Canada. So anybody wants to talk more about it with me, come up afterwards. We are looking to be able to pay around $6.50 a bushel for oats.
We're gonna hold you to that, you know that?
If you invest money in the mill. So,
Oh, wait a minute, you never said that before.
Yeah, I gotta throw that out there, yeah.
Thank you but what I'm saying is, we are developing markets for the small grains. Okay? Josh, you have a customer that they're gonna change their whole cattle ration to small grains and get away from corn, correct?
Yeah.
Is that you?
Yes, don't know the specifics on it, but looking at it from basically a gut health standpoint on his cow-calf herd, switching to a higher fiber diet with the oats and get away from the corn. Or I think he's been doing a lot of byproducts actually to the cows to get through the winter when they don't have grass growing. So there's those potentials out there as well. That, getting into the feed market, traditional feed markets, swine, beef is going to be a little bit tougher to do just because of the price of some of the other products out there. It's probably going to be a little bit less expensive per unit of energy, but there's going to be people that want to make that switch down the road too. So.
Yeah, I want to give Martin credit because he's an example of a group of farmers in his area, Byron area. When did you start raising oats, Martin?
A few of us tried it for the very first time again in 2018, and then 2020, 3 of us did 125 acres.
And how many acres do you anticipate planting this year in your area?
Right now on the spreadsheet, so this is the lowest number it's probably going to be before spring, is 4,300 acres.
If they can do it, can we? Except he's flooding the market right now. We got to make sure we get Landon's online right away so we can handle all this oats. But this is what excites us in this business when we start talking about small grains. And that's why you got bombarded today about small grains.
So one thing about markets, sorry to interrupt, is that where are mills from right where we are? Well, there's one really close, right over there. There's one in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is the biggest oat mill in the world, I believe, still. There's 4 in Minneapolis. Why are they all right here? Because this is where it used to be growing. And they outsourced it because we went another way. We went to ethanol, soybean crushing. So the reason that they're going to Canada is because that's where they're willing to grow them. And they kind of gave up on us because we weren't really willing to grow them. So the thing about putting acres back together is to show the mills and customers, and whether it's a new mill or an existing one, that hey, we can do it and we're going to keep doing it. So it's not exactly that we could by any means flood the market per se. I mean, yes, there's potential for that, but there are millions of acres of oats growing. They're just a long ways away from right here. So if we can show that we are a dependable source for high quality oats, and they got to the point that their oat buyers don't even believe that we can grow them. That's the point that they're at. Southeast Minnesota, Northeast Iowa, they can't grow oats. So there's a rebuilding there because I think we found the shortcomings of a 2-crop system and we need to, come back to a more diverse system.
And like we talked before, more than likely these tax credits for low carbon footprint produced foods is going to reach every crop. So if we can grow oats here and haul them to St. Ansgar versus them hauling them down from Canada, that will reduce their score. Or us reeling it down to Cedar Rapids is lower than them shipping from Canada down to Cedar Rapids.
It's something they have priced, the tariff discovery or whatever, and the exchange rates. I guess I didn't know, and you told me, that the exchange rate is determined the minute the commodity crosses the border, not at the time that the contract is made. So there's always an adjustment that has to be made, where they don't have that with us. And they write a contract for us for $650 when Landon does that next year. That's the price. So there's that side of it too. And then in Minnesota, in southeast Minnesota, we have an EPA response to drinking water. So, we are going to have to address drinking water in southeast Minnesota by mandate because of the Clean Water Act.
We talked about what's not last, don't forget about rye, we need more rye production acres, so we're gonna keep pushing that one too. But if no one else has anything else that's really pressing you wanna get out,
After Landon starts buying 650 oats, what's your bid gonna be for cover crops?
for cover crop oats, guess what, we're gonna have to probably match it.
That's why Dean gave me a blurb, he wants to know his price.
Think of all the seeds he's gonna sell. So
Hey, you weren't supposed to say that, okay? Come on. I think it all go hand in hand, but we want to, as a group, as our business, a street, we really want to appreciate and say thank you for coming today. It was a beautiful day. You probably could have been working on equipment or working outside, but...
Or planting oats?
No, do not plant oats. Not today. Martin, you didn't do a very good job. Well, anyway, have a great spring. We'll stay in touch.